Hey everyone, welcome back to Make It Happen Monday with Shay McGinnis and Casey Ann Bakery. In this video, we are going to make some royal icing. So I do not give out my royal icing recipe. However, this is just my tutorial, so I'll walk you through it. I start off with powdered sugar. I put all my cups into my standing mixer. Then I add the meringue powder that you just saw. It was pre-measured. And this is just vanilla extract. You can add whatever your recipe calls for. Next up, I'm going to add some lukewarm water. This part is really important that it's lukewarm, room temperature. You don't want it to be too hot or too cold because that's going to affect the consistency of your icing and can totally ruin your icing overall. For my royal icing, I definitely prefer to slowly incorporate the water. So I start off with, I believe this is about 10 tablespoons of room temperature water. And then I'm going to start to mix it. So I'll lower and I use the whisk attachment on my standing mixer. And I start off at a very low speed. You don't want to start at too high of a speed, otherwise powdered sugar and meringue powder are going to go everywhere. I tried to zoom in so you can see the icing slowly come together. You can kind of see how it's starting to form a ball, but there's still those powdered sugar on the outer rim, which means I need more water. Sorry, I know this isn't the best view I tried, but here you can see I've decided I need more water. It's totally clumped all in the whisk attachment, so there's a better angle of it. It's kind of slowly dripping off, but there's still all that powdered sugar on the edge of the bowl. So I'm adding a few more tablespoons of water. At this point, you want to just slowly start to add in your water. You don't want to add too much because it's much easier to add more water than it is to try to add more powdered sugar and get the right consistency that way. Again, slowly adding in water, tablespoon by tablespoon. And eventually it'll slow it down to even by teaspoon, half a teaspoon, just because you want to get the perfect consistency. At this point, you can also slowly start to increase your speed on your mixture to try to get some of that icing out of the whisk attachment. But there's still that powdered sugar at the bottom of the bowl that you can see I'm trying to get the icing out of the whisk. I'm going to scrape down the edges. You want to do this periodically to make sure you've got a good thorough mix. You can see their powdered sugar is still at the bottom like I mentioned earlier. I use my rubber spatula to mix. I swear my rubber spatula is my favorite tool. I use it every single day when baking. I cannot stress enough how much I love this spatula. At this point I can tell I'm almost at the consistency of icing that I want, but it's still too thick because it's not really dripping off the whisk at all when I lift the head of the mixer. So I'm going to add just a little bit more water. At this point, I might be adding in half a teaspoon to 1 teaspoon. Very, very small amounts. I would not be adding in tablespoons. I also know with my mixer, this might be different with other mixers, but the water will kind of sit at the top of the royal icing around the edges. So at some point, I have to lift up the head of the mixer and use my rubber spatula to really mix in the rest of the water that I just added in. A good sign for me is that some of the icing is slowly dripped off the whisk. It's not kind of clumped like we saw last. That's a cue for me that my icing's coming together to get that thick piping icing and not the flooding icing. I'm going to keep whisking here, and then I'll do one final check of the consistency before I'm like, okay, that's what I want. Now that I have the consistency that I like, I'm whipping it for 5 minutes. I'm not going to show you the whole 5 minutes because that'd be so boring for you. But once I get it to the nice peak consistency, the 5 minutes, really make sure it's airy, fluffy, light, and shiny. The last thing you want to do with your royal icing is as soon as you're done with it, get it into an airtight container. Because otherwise this will crust over and dry really fast within 10-20 minutes. So put it in that airtight container so that way you're not working with crusty icing. This is the consistency that I like, but everyone's different. Thanks for watching.